Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, your home for inspiring conversations with outdoor insiders. Each week, author, speaker, adventurer, and outdoor industry veteran Rick Saez talks in-depth with iconic brand founders, sales and marketing pros, product designers, and industry rising stars. Listen in when Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig and grow your outdoor career. Catch us again when the conversation shifts to the hottest outdoor products, destinations, and the latest industry insights. And now, here's Rick.
Episode 256 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Tightline Media CEO Kris Millgate, brought to you this month by Audible. Kris spent a decade in TV news before starting Tightline Media in 2006. Her first book, My Place Among Men, is available now, and her most recent film, Ocean to Idaho, capturing the migration of thousands of salmon on their return from the Oregon coast to the Idaho wilderness, premieres this summer. You can see the trailer at tightlinemedia.com. Welcome to the show, Kris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to chat with you this morning. What's happening in your world today?
Today the sun's out. We have snow on the ground, but as we should this time of year in Idaho. So
yeah,
we like that.
That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. That means there's a little moisture to fill the rivers again as the cycle goes.
Yes, as it goes. We want those rivers full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need that here too. I'm in Bishop, and it's pretty dry. Land of little rain, as Mary Austin dubbed it. What triggered your love for the outdoors and adventure? That started at a young age, from what I can tell through your bio.
I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay.
The Wasatch Mountains were my playground, and I always felt comfortable outside. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that at an early age. And I didn't grow up hunting with my dad. I didn't grow up fishing with my dad. I grew up hiking with my dad.
Okay.
And my dad is forever lost. So when you hike with my dad, he's
no
not
sense of direction, eh?
Right, yeah. He doesn't have an internal compass. My mom says I don't have a danger gene, which is probably true, but my dad doesn't have an internal compass. And so we would wander endlessly, and he would never admit he was lost. But I found that by following his dusty frame down a little trail forever and ever, that I learned patience, persistence, and resilience, and all those things help me do my job today.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I would just follow him when I was little. I didn't question if we were lost, but I knew darn well we were. And as I got older, I figured that out. But I still knew, lost or not, that I was comfortable outside. That's where I feel whole. That's
very cool. Do you have it? Did you get in any really major lost events, like you had to spend the night, or took you all night to get home? Any of that kind of stuff?
I think, well, as far as lost goes, I don't remember us needing a rescue.
Okay.
Now, on a trail race recently, they pulled the flags ahead of me, and yes, I did get legitimately lost, and it took some people on the ground coming to find me because I went in the wrong direction. But when I was little, there was nothing serious like that. Mm-hmm. I do remember hiking in the high Uintas, and there was nobody there. Mm-hmm. And we came across in one day during one hike this meadow with about 5 bull moose laying down in it. And I've always remembered that, thinking, this is it. This is like what you're going to see every time you hike. And that's certainly not the case.
Right.
But, thank goodness he was lost. We saw amazing things.
I'll bet.
And I have no idea how to get to that spot now. And he probably doesn't either. But because we kind of wandered, we found some amazing places. And in that same trip, we also got stuck in the pouring rain. And I remember throwing everything into the truck, soaking wet, and leaving in the middle of the night because we were drowning.
Got wet. Yeah. No, you're right. When you get lost, you find some pretty cool stuff. Getting lost is not always a bad thing.
True.
Yeah. And so your bio also says you had a fear of men and beards. Talk a little bit about that.
So I spent a lot of time hiking with my dad.
Yeah.
Without that danger gene that my mom says I don't have.
Did he have a beard?
My dad did not have a beard growing up.
Okay.
It was a clean-shaven household is what we grew up with.
Okay.
But I, as long as I've been comfortable outside, I've always also been afraid of beards. It's just like being born left-handed. It's just how I was born. Huh. And as I got older, I kind of figured out why. I was painfully shy, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. But with a beard, for sure, it was out of the question.
Huh.
Yeah. And now that I'm older and I've had time to kind of think through it, I've figured out what it is. When I was younger, I studied people. I wanted to know what made them tick, what worked in their speaking style, what didn't. I knew I was going to be a storyteller, and as a storyteller, I needed to be able to ask questions and get over being shy.
Yeah.
So I would study people. So when I was shy and I would look away because I didn't want you to look at me, I would still study you. And if you had a beard, I couldn't see your facial expressions.
Right.
And so as a child, you have to realize what that means. Just like the kids that are dealing with faces that have masks over them now.
Yeah.
A beard to me was kind of like a mask, and I couldn't read that person's character. I felt like they had something to hide because they were hiding under hair. And so that made me think that there was something iffy about them. Now I run around with beards in the woods all the time, and I realize that the beard does not determine the character.
Right.
But when I was little, I thought they were hiding something with all that hair.
Yeah, when you're a little kid, it's interesting how you respond to some of the different, looks or facial expressions too. Sometimes it doesn't mean what you think it means. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And so much of that is lost. We get into this pandemic and we think, okay, we can make these adjustments, but there is much lost in our face when we cannot see half of it when we have a discussion.
Yeah. I mean, you can
much is lost.
Yeah, you can see a lot in the eyes, but not all of it. You got to need that whole face. That's a good point.
Yeah, have you tested how much you have to smile with a mask on before it reaches your eyes? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I find myself smiling a lot more too, just to get my eyes sparkly, so people know I'm not mad at them.
Right. And I mean, if you were to take that mask off, it's a goofy grin. It's the mouth open, teeth fully showing.
Exactly.
To get it to reach your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. You have to put a big old smile on. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your writing career get started? Did that start at a young age?
Yes, I started writing. I remember even in elementary school, I could always write. I liked English. I understood sentence structure. I understood what worked and how to break it apart and make it work even better. And then through junior high and high school, that kind of carried through. And you take that test in high school that says, here's what you should be when you grow up.
Right.
And of course, mine said communicator. And of course, everyone laughed at that. How is the shy girl going to be a reporter? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I knew where I was going to be, and I was going to figure out how to get over all my quirks and learn to be a storyteller. And so I knew my major when I went to college. It was broadcast journalism.
Wow.
I was going to tell you stories on TV in the 10 o'clock news.
Wow.
And I never wavered from that. Yeah. I could always write. And that was my strong point. I learned to shoot. I learned to read script in a voice that sounds like we're talking and not reading. There's all these little nuances to it.
Yeah.
And then I worked for TV stations for a decade, one TV station or another around the country. And the whole point was to get to a bigger market. And, I came from Salt Lake City. That's a big TV market. I wanted to get back there.
Yeah.
And then as I moved around, my job was great, but my lifestyle sucked. And I worked at 11 o'clock at night. And, my husband didn't like some of the places that we lived. And so right about the time that the internet was, born, I realized all the mediums were going to mesh. And so after 10 years of TV contracts, I went freelance.
Oh.
And what that did for me was instead of just working for one TV station, I could work for all of them.
Yeah.
And I could work for newspaper, magazine, radio, web. I could work for all of them.
Everybody. Yeah.
So because I could always write, I could write for any medium. And because I could shoot, I knew how to frame up a shot for video and for photo and what needed. I understood the specs for laying it out in paper versus on screen. And so everything kind of translated really well for me. But the basic was I always knew how to write. I have an obsession with words. I'm terrible with numbers. Don't make me do math. But I can write you an essay all day long.
Interesting.
And I'm always playing with words in my head. And so my brother and sister always teach me that I have my own alphabet. And I have since I was little. So that's kind of been my saving grace, where I could always write about anything for any medium. And that has kind of evolved into where I'm at now with Tightline Media as a freelancer.
That's fortunate, too, that you recognized that early on. I mean, that's huge to know that. Yeah. What inspired you to pick up a camera?
The inspiration for picking up the camera came when I realized that while I had all of these words and I could put them in perfect order, there was a visual component. I wanted to see what went with those words. And that's why I chose the video TV medium when I did. right
Gotcha.
from the get-go. Video is my base. That's my primary world. And when you see nowadays, there's a lot of films with a lot of slow-mo in them. I think the reason we're seeing that slow-mo happen in film is because you have a lot of still photographers shooting videos, and they're shooting those videos with a still camera, and they're used to thinking in a single frame of still.
Interesting.
And I come from the brain that's used to seeing action, and I want things to happen in real time. And we don't move in slow-mo, so rarely will I put slow-mo in my videos.
Right.
And then having that base of video be my world, it was a pretty easy transition to learn how to shoot photo.
I'll bet.
I've shot video for 25 years. I've shot photo for 15.
Gotcha.
And I had no problem taking a class from a professional photographer to teach me how to use my camera in manual mode versus auto mode. And the class wasn't about framing. I already knew how to frame up subjects and how to tell that story. It was about how to use the different apertures and
the
shutter
technical
speeds.
side. Right. Yeah.
You know, some of that translates between a video camera and a photo, but not everything.
Yeah.
So I picked that up, but I've always wanted to see what you were showing me. And what that means in a story is on video, you know that the guy that I'm in the fishing boat with is wearing a blue jacket. When I write that for a newspaper or a magazine, I have to tell you he's in a blue jacket.
Right.
So the writing style is a little different.
That's interesting that you picked up on that visual. What do you think triggered that? Is it just the actual experience you had in television?
I think that I chose the visual medium right out of the gate because I've always been obscenely aware of what's going on around me. And I knew at a young age, clear back when I was studying faces, that I had that visual desire to see what's going on versus spell it out. I've always liked to write, but I didn't want to have to always spell out everything. I wanted you to see it.
Right.
And I can see that in my own kids now. You know, when our boys turn 12, they each get a trip with me. When they turn 18, they get a trip with my husband.
Oh, cool.
So when the oldest one turned 12, he chose San Francisco because our boys play hockey and he wanted to see the Blackhawks play the Sharks in San Jose.
Okay.
And we stayed in downtown San Francisco in the financial district.
Wow.
And he looked just like me when I was little. We walked around downtown. And when you're in a big city, people put on blinders. They don't look at the people on the side.
Well, he was probably gobsmacked by all the...
It blew him away. And I think that's one of the reasons we do these trips. We live in Idaho. Idaho Falls is pretty small. I want them to be exposed to all different kinds of lifestyles.
Right.
And you have to go to a different city to get that.
Yep.
And so he was blown away by what he saw. And he said on the first day, he said, Mom, there's no one looks at each other. There's cement everywhere, and the only bird I've seen is a pigeon. And so I can see that was totally me when I was little. I was really aware of how people were not connected with each other and not connected with the world around them.
Still to this day, even more so maybe in some places. Yeah.
And so that's how I was when I was little, and it's really neat to see that in my kids now.
That's very cool. Yeah. Where does your entrepreneurial spirit come from? Are there entrepreneurs in your family?
I don't have a danger gene, but I might have a crazy gene. That might be what it is. I will say this. My father is by far the proudest workaholic I've ever known. And I pick up my workaholic tendencies from him.
What did he do?
He is, you'll love this. My father is an architect, but of a very specific genre.
Oh.
If you walk into a building with my father, he will always look up. And he always looks up because he's looking for the sprinkler heads.
Okay, gotcha.
My dad makes sure your building doesn't burn down.
Yeah, well, that's good. Much needed.
Yes, and there were several times growing up, he had a den in our basement. And time again, he would start businesses on his own and try to have his own business of fire sprinkler design. Yeah. Over and over and over again. And I remember growing up with that. And so when I decided to go freelance, I was really hesitant to start Tightline Media because my dad had tried so many times to start. And I did not want my family relying on me and then me not being able to really start.
Yeah.
And so to be at beat the mark where Tightline Media is turning 16 years old.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, I made it through the recession and the pandemic.
Yeah.
By the skin of my teeth sometimes, but but that's significant to me, and I also think it's significant to my father.
I'll bet. Yeah, you started and you haven't finished yet, but you're still going. I mean, you got it off the ground. I can relate to that. We talked about this before we turned the mic on about the podcast. I mean, I get mine from my grandfather. Same thing. He was always tinkering with ideas and started this and started that. So I can totally relate.
Yep, that's where it is.
Interesting. And so tell our listeners about, we talked a little bit about your TV news career. What did you like most about that?
Oh, the storytelling.
Gotcha.
What I liked most about TV was the storytelling. Mm-hmm. But in TV news, I had to learn early on that I needed to create an instant rapport with strangers.
Yep.
You have to have a rapport with somebody before they will talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know them, I mean, I'm meeting new people every day, and I've got to do a story for live story for the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Right.
And there's got to be at least 2 interviews in that story. That's 6 new people a day that I have to develop an instant rapport with and get them to tell me their secrets.
Right. Not easy.
Not easy at all. And so I liked, I'm intrigued by challenge. I think that's something that becomes pretty obvious in me when you talk to me about my work, when you look at my stories. I'm pretty obsessive about what I do, and I can wear you out with my overeager sense of being when it comes to covering the outdoors and doing it in a proper storytelling manner. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that I could tell a story and frankly tell that story in 2 minutes, because of in a newscast, it's got to be within 2 minutes.
Quick, that's pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
So you don't waste words. You get right to the point.
Yeah, that's a great skill.
So even when a magazine will say, we need you to write 1,000 words, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And a book, 50,000 words, that's a lifetime to me. And when I come from a world of 2-minute news, I'm not going to waste any words. So even if you put me on 1,000-word magazine story or a 50,000-word book, every single word has purpose in there. There's no fluff, because I come from 2 minutes of news where you didn't add any extra fluff.
So do you think it's harder for you to write like in those big, long magazine articles and books and stuff because of that? Or you just have to work harder to make it a detailed story?
I find that writing length longer than 500 words is harder for me. And I know why it's harder. It's because I come from where you did quick, fast turn
2 minutes,
news. You shot it, wrote it, edited it the same day, probably within a 2 to 4 hour time frame. And I'm used to that pace.
Yeah.
It's hard to get me to slow down and work at a longer pace. Even on magazines that might have they're planning a year out right now.
Yeah.
If you give me an assignment right now, I want to work on it right now. I don't want to work on it in May or an August issue.
Right.
So I've had to learn to pace myself a little better. And I think that's been a good thing to learn, because as I've learned to pace myself, I've also learned to tolerate lengthy pieces. And there is no doubt that within a lengthy piece, you are a stronger writer because you add to it things that you cannot fit in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
The stories mean more.
Yeah, I was going to say, the story is more important because you put more detail in it. You don't just put fluff in it. It's very relevant to the story, whereas a lot of people write these things. It's like, well, you could have said that in 3 words,
Yeah, so when I wrote My Place Among Men, I sent in my first draft, and it was 15,000 words. And I was like, oh, I'm spent. That's like the most I've ever written. Right. I'm exhausted. My editor cut that in half, sent me back 8,000 words and said, not good enough, dig deeper.
Wow, yeah.
And I had no idea that I had deeper in me, but I did.
Yeah.
And it strengthened my writing to a whole new level that was so obvious that the year my book came out, which was last year, all the outlets that I was working for said, wow, your writing has advanced so much. And I knew exactly why. It's because I had to push to reach 50,000 words and make every single word count.
Yeah.
And then your writing goes to a whole new level when you have to meet that type of challenge. And it shows up in all your other work.
Yeah, boy, it sticks with you. Yeah, once you do that, I'll bet. Yeah, you write everything. You're right. Yeah, well, good on the editor. That was awesome. And we'll link
I
to
have
that.
a thick skin, so I can take a criticism and then I just suck it up and move on with it. But we'll do it.
Dig in. Yep, I hear you. Yeah. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes. I look forward to getting that book. Sounds like a great story. Is your time in TV the inspiration behind Tightline Media? Is that where that came from?
My time in TV was, in a roundabout way, an inspiration for Tightline Media. Mm-hmm. Working, about 2 years at a time under contract for one station or another. I worked for every station but CBS. That's kind of just how it worked out.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot about the industry. You work in small markets where you have to do every job, from running the teleprompter to editing your own stories to whatever happens, it has to happen up by you, because small markets, that's how it goes. In bigger markets, everyone fights about who has to do what because no one wants to do anything. And so that was weird to me. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to tell stories. And in TV, I had to cover crops and crime and whatever else was on the police scanner for the day, or down at City Hall. And I know that from the very beginning, I was always shoving outdoor stories into people's TVs. There was not an outdoor beat, but I wanted there to be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I know that those stories mattered. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you hike, bike, hunt, fish, whatever it is you do outside. The reason that opportunity exists is because something's going on that's conserving our natural resources to make it so that you can recreate. Yep. And so those stories really mattered to me. So I would shove them in your TV anyway, and I'd figure out how to make them the top story of the night. It was some kind of news hitch. Okay. And so by the time I decided to go freelance, yes, I knew video was going to be my base, but instead of being general assignment, I niched out. 95% of what I do is outdoor related. Mm-hmm. And that's a conscious decision. When I went freelance, it was because I didn't want to cover crops and crime anymore. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those still come into my stories. If we got crime, it's usually poaching, wildlife trafficking. Mm-hmm. Crops, certainly that matters. We've got deer running through cornfields. Right. So those elements still matter. And I liked having to learn how to cover every possible beat. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to really hit the outdoors. Yeah. So I niched down to that when I started.
That's pretty smart. Yeah, that's pretty smart. Yeah, that's they say the riches are in the niches. So it's haven't experienced that yet, but it's coming.
I don't know. I don't think I've experienced it either. But if I wanted to make a lot of money, I would have had a fatter wallet if I'd have done something else.
Well, yeah, we're all in the outdoors because we love it. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's something to the flexibility of my lifestyle, the opportunity for fresh air, that you can't replace with just a fatter wallet.
That's right.
And
that's right.
If I have a bad day and I start to gripe, my husband will just quickly say, "You know what? We can shove you back in a cubicle. Do you want to do that?"
Yeah, you can find the prompt.
And I'm totally over it.
Yeah,
I'm over it as soon as he says that.
Yeah, that's a good thing about the outdoors. We can just go out and blow off some steam and see everything and anything we want to see.
Yeah, but I do think there's on the flip side of that, everyone thinks it's just fun and glamorous to work outside. I'm telling you right now, a 15-hour day in a wildfire where my nose bleeds all day and I'm hundreds of miles from decent food and a bathroom, those are not glamorous days. Right. And there's a lot of work that goes into those shots. The guy that's fishing, he's having a great day of play. Me trying to shoot footage of him fishing is not play. It is work.
Yeah. No, it's all work. I think that's the thing that we all, whatever you choose to do as a vocation, there are going to be parts of it that are work. I don't care how much fun most of it is. I have 2 degrees in recreation and, made a choice early on to make the outdoors my vocation. But there are days when, as you're a sales guy or you're a product guy or whatever, that it's work and just the nature of the beast, I think.
Yeah, and I think that there's a real tendency by people that want to especially get into the outdoor work that will do it for nothing. And I worry about that because this isn't a hobby for me. This is how I feed my family. And I have to make money or I have to do something else.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of that. People are selling their services for lower amounts, and I think that they are doing a disservice to a lot of the outdoor pros. And eventually they're going to find out that, they're going to come to a point where they're not going to go to that lowest bidder because they want to make some money too. So you might as well start out making a decent, charging a decent amount so you can continue. But that could be maybe that should be a whole nother episode, actually. That's a good one.
That is a good one. And I think a lot of the reason you'll see that undercutting of value across the industry is people are doing this on the side of of their office job.
Yeah. Or they just want to break into it and they think that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I helped mentor my neighbor's grandson. And she came over the other day and she was so excited. And she's like, he graduated. He's out of college and he's writing for this newspaper. And I'm so glad you helped him. And I said, oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I love it. And she said, yeah, he's getting paid in beer.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And I said, no, that's not how this goes down.
Right.
He is not going to be able to feed his family on beer, and the beer's going to wear out, pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Beer and gear, you can't make a living and feed your face on beer and gear. So yeah, you need dollars in there somewhere, folks.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor. Hey, do you love to read but don't always have the time to sit down with a good book? I'm the same, and sometimes I just feel like having someone else tell the story. Well, if you use Audible, then you know. If not, you're missing out. It's like having a library in your phone, and I use it a lot. Audible helps the miles fly by when I'm on the road as I'm enjoying great books I discover or are recommended by friends. Get your free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from. Go to audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast and start your free 30-day trial with Audible today. And now back to the show. So can you talk a little bit about your new film, Ocean to Idaho? I saw the trailer this morning. That looks pretty cool.
Oh, I'm glad you saw the trailer. It's very likely you're the first person to see it because I just finished it.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It's kind of coming, like everyone is going to learn soon that it's out. So I love that you got to see it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, so the film that comes out in 2021 is Ocean to Idaho, and it follows salmon migration from the Oregon coast to the Idaho wilderness. And the magic behind all that actually started in early 2020 when I went on the road to follow that migration route. So it's a multi-year project, and that's unusual for me to spread something out like this. But I wanted 1 year where I actually shot the migration is how it had to be done.
Yeah.
And then the next year is when it comes out, because by the time the migration's done, we're into snow and people don't want to watch something like that. I want them to watch this story when the salmon are moving through the area again. And it's the longest piece I've ever edited for video. So it's quite a crunch on time. But the reason so many people know about Ocean to Idaho already a year in advance is because I let them follow me virtually on the road trip.
Oh, good. That's smart. Good.
Yeah. And so everybody was at home. I knew this was what I was going to do. I said, I'm going to follow salmon migration from the ocean to Idaho. I said that October 2019. By March of 2020, my plans were down the drain. And I said, I'm going to follow salmon migration from the ocean to Idaho. Pandemic be damned.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do was dump all my plans and figure out how to follow these fish, because we were not moving, but the fish still were.
Right.
And I wanted to follow them safely and responsibly. And that meant living out of a truck and a camper all summer, following the migration route through Oregon, Washington, and Idaho.
Did you do that solo?
Solo.
Wow.
All by myself.
Wow.
And I had masks. I had a temperature chart. I had to take my temperatures for several weeks in advance before I even stepped foot in Oregon. And I started following the migration in June. And I finished with the last few dozen Chinook salmon that make it to mile 850 in central Idaho wilderness in September.
Wow, very cool.
And it was alone. There is one stretch within that 850 miles that is all wilderness and there's no road. The only way to navigate that is a raft. And I navigated it on a raft because somebody that I know in Idaho picked up a permit because everyone from out of town couldn't come use the tags they'd drawn.
Right.
Yeah. And so there was that 80-mile stretch of the 850-mile route when I wasn't alone because my family was with me and we were on a raft with other families on their rafts, and we did whitewater rafting through that wilderness stretch.
Wow, that's cool.
Other than that, I was alone.
That's amazing.
And, I shoot with 5 cameras, and I shot with 5 cameras by myself.
Jeez.
I lived out of a Toyota Tundra and a 4-wheel camper On top of that, I had to learn how to run everything in one day. And when everything kind of fell into place and I said, I'm going and I'm going to have to do it in a way that isolates me, Toyota stepped in with wheels. Four-wheel camper stepped in with the house on top of the wheels.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to go. And I just needed somewhere safe to keep me and my gear and to isolate.
Mm-hmm.
No one was allowed inside my camper or my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't with anybody unless I was interviewing them. And then they were 6 feet away. I was totally self-contained. I didn't go in any stores.
That's a story right there, and it's in and of itself. Are you going to tell that? Are you going to tell that story, or is that part of the film?
That's a great question. Do I tell that story in the film or not? And right now, here's where I'm at. Letting people virtually follow me while they were stuck at home during the pandemic really caught fire.
I'll bet.
People really liked seeing what was going on in the world through someone who has to cover it accurately and fairly. And I don't paint it pretty. This is what's happening.
Yeah. Well, we all like to live vicariously through others sometimes. So that
I think during the pandemic that people really attached to that. And so I quickly took that road trip and morphed it into what became kind of its own standing identity. There's this whole library of episodes.
Oh, wow.
And they came out twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
People watched. I had a mile marker from mile 0 to 850, and I'd say, we're at this mile marker, and here's why we're here.
They can follow you on the map. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, this is the first of 8 dams. That's why we're right here.
Yeah.
And then that would be on Thursday, and on Tuesday it was behind the scenes. Here's my temperature chart. Here's my masks. Here's what happens when my camera breaks. Here's what happens when I fall out of my camper.
Yeah.
And this is why my face is taped up on camera at the end. It's because I have stitches in my face. They got to live all that with me along the way.
Yeah.
And that, you can't plan that. And
that's a story
developed.
too. That's a film too. That's, I think, my thing.
And so I made all those episodes, and people kind of seem to like the idea of binge watching those now that they're all together.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Yeah.
But when I started to edit the film, and I had 25 hours of footage, and I needed to fit it into a 26-minute show, it takes some serious prioritizing.
Right.
And as a journalist, in the truest sense of the word, there is no I in that story. That I perspective. Yeah. And it's all about every person. I have every person along that migration route.
Yeah.
And what that water means to them.
Yeah.
And what's going on here that helps fish, what's going on here that hurts fish.
Yeah.
You have to involve all those perspectives. I wanted everyone's perspective in this issue.
Yeah.
And I took it as my responsibility to cover it fairly, accurately, balanced. You start talking about dams. Should they stay or should they go? You damn well better get both sides of that story.
That's right. Yeah.
So I decided in the film itself, I pulled myself out of it as a personality. And it's strictly coming from the perspective of everyone that lives along the migration route.
That's smart.
And then I'm going to create a director's cut that pulls it out and says, oh, yeah, here's the spot where I broke my camera. And this is what happened that day.
Right.
And here, let me tell you about these, this part here. I showed up at mile 850 with stitches in 4 places.
You must have been haggard. Yeah. God, I can't imagine. Yeah.
And
I think that would be a good story right there, too, though. I think there's a lot of people that like to know, the behind the scenes, and that just got validated by all the people that followed you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, it's pretty uncomfortable to watch yourself fall apart as you're watching the fish fall apart.
Right. I'll bet.
And at the end, the fish died and I didn't. And so now I have to decide how all that gets to roll out.
Yeah,
and the film itself won't have me in it, but the director's cut will.
Cool.
And the road trip episodes definitely have me in them.
Man, I can't wait to see it. We'll link to that in the show notes, too. It's called Ocean to Idaho. And there's a trailer there. That sounds super fun. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I got to go to the Banff Film Festival a few times back when I was with Eagle Creek, and it just all those kinds of films that you're talking about. I really was inspired not only by the film, but then some of the backstories when you got to go back and talk to the director and the filmmaker, and so I think there's an opportunity to do both of those things. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I think even more so now. The one thing that social media has done is it has changed the expectations on the audience's side.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in news, I could do a live shot at 10 o'clock and tell you what happened on the TV screen, and you would watch me in your living room, but you couldn't tell me anything. You could call the newsroom if you wanted to complain or say, I need to know something else about this. But with social media, you can actually connect with that person more. And so your expectation grows. You want a more personal connection with that journalist.
Yeah.
And I realize now that, you know, halfway through my career, that was a significant shift. And I needed to be open to the idea that people wanted to know what it was like to cover this story and not just know the story. They're more advanced now. They want more than just the story.
Yeah.
They want the backstory.
Well, and I think they've realized they can get it now, right? Back in the day, they couldn't get it. They had no way, well, I shouldn't say no way, but very few ways to reach out to the producers and the filmmakers. But now, like you say, it's right there. It's on social media. Just call them up, you know, send them an email, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. Do you have any desire to make a feature-length film?
Do I have any desire to make a feature-length film? I thought hard about this question for a long time. You know, when I say I come from 2-minute news, the longer things get, the more of a lifetime they feel. But they also, the challenge intrigues me of adding length. I honestly didn't think I could pull off a book. I do not have the attention span to sit down that long. But honestly, I broke my leg in 3 places coaching kid hockey. And I was on the couch for 4 months growing bone around a rod. Oof. And I had to sit down. I was on drugs that made my muscles hold still.
Right.
And so you can crank out a pretty decent chunk of word count when you have to do that.
Yes, you can.
Now, I don't want to do that to create a feature film, but 26 minutes for Ocean to Idaho will be the longest I have ever produced. When I produce shows for Idaho Public TV, they are for a half-hour format, which is 26 minutes. Most of my other films have hovered around the 10-minute mark. You know, on the internet, shoot, I still turn out 2-minute movies because that's what people want to watch.
They don't have the time. Yeah.
But, you know, as we talked about the audience expectation growing, I think that when someone says that they're going to make a feature film, your first instinct is to think, well, no one's going to watch that. It's too long. But think of the other side of that. Our audience's education level and expectation level is growing. You know, they will sit down for it, even if it's long, if it's good enough.
Well, they will and they do. I mean, look at the explosion of Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and all these places, YouTube, where we watch all these things, especially now in the pandemic. But even before the pandemic, people, I think they like the story part of it. Like I was saying about the backstory, the director's cut, if you will, of Ocean to Idaho. That's going to be a phenomenal story. That could be an interesting film.
Yeah, and I think that there's the intrigue of a feature film is there, but I think it's only there for me now because I've grown into it.
Yeah.
There was no way back when I was doing 2-minute news that I could have seriously considered a feature film.
Right, sure. Yeah.
And now I've cranked out 50,000 words for a book. So, hey, maybe feature film might be the next length.
There you go. Well, you heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
Well, let's sit with the 26 minutes that haven't come out yet.
Yeah, let's see how that goes. Yeah, one thing at a time. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to some other questions. So you do a lot of outdoor activities. Do you have a favorite?
Favorite outdoor activity?
Something that you, when you're not filming, when you just need to go out with the kids or just blow off some steam, do you go fishing? Do you go hiking? What do you do?
I am a fly fisher. I am a trail runner. I am a raptor, a hiker, a biker. I'm all those things.
I think you do it all, yeah.
Yeah. If I get a day off and I want to get out, it's not so much about what I'm doing, it's where I'm doing it.
Okay.
That's what matters to me.
Yeah.
The farther away, the more remote it is, the more enticing it is to me. And I think even if I'm like a high mountain lake, you're not going to catch a big 5-pound lunker. And you're going to work your butt off to get up there, and you're going to catch maybe something as long as your hand.
Yeah.
But that fishing to me is so much more rewarding because I work so hard to get to it and there's nobody else around.
Yeah.
I tend to do okay farther away. And trail running is the same way. I'm an ultra, so I run distance. And man, you get me back in there on the Continental Divide, which is deep wilderness on the Idaho-Montana border.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna really feel like I'm in my element because no one's around me. Whereas other runners, particularly women, they feel more comfortable running where there's people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel better running where there's no people.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I do better when there's. I mean, I've been this way. My parents say since I was a kid, I don't talk to anybody. I don't always play by myself. I still do that, and I still find that I would much like living here in Bishop. There's a bunch of places that I can go fishing, but I don't like to go there because there's you got to find an open piece of water. I want to go somewhere where I can just go fish, and or hike or whatever it is. So it's interesting. I never heard it put that way though, but that's crystallizes it for me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll see me doing any of those activities.
Yeah.
I work in the hike and bike world and the hook and bullet world, so I've got to be pretty versatile for all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my kids, they've been exposed to all of it. They're little river rats. The one's a heck of a runner. He's so much faster than me now, but I can go farther than him. So that makes me feel better.
There you go. That's good. Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit here. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor biz or grow their career or the filmmaking biz? Writing?
Ooh, which one do you want to hit? Outdoor or?
Let's do outdoor. Let's stick with outdoor because that's pretty much what I ask everybody.
And do you want to get into outdoor as a business?
Well, yeah, outdoor as a business. I mean, I think a lot of folks, that listen to this show, they listen for the stories, but they also either are in the business or looking to get in the business. And
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to the outdoor business, I have a pretty interesting take on it. And it comes from 2.5 decades of watching our industry shift. And I'm so impressed by what I see within our industry as things shift and what matters now. And the way to come at this business, if I were coming at it now, would be to look at it from the user's perspective in every way. Mm-hmm. And that is because the way we value our natural resources has made a dramatic shift in the last century. Mm-hmm. And you can see it in the way that outdoor users lay out their expectations. And those users are your customers. Mm-hmm. So a century ago, we were mining, logging, drilling,
pretty cavalier about the outdoor space. Yeah.
Natural resources to us were, what do we get out of them? Mm-hmm. What can they do for us with a dollar sign? Mm-hmm. Now look at where we're at today. Yes, there's still mining, logging, drilling, developing, a little bit of damming. All that's still going on. But you know what? Now they're just at the table for that natural resource as it is.
Yeah.
Natural resources hold a value for what they offer us as they are, or in many cases that you see today, as they will be as they're put back together. Mm-hmm. That has a value now. Our natural resources hold value beyond dollar.
Right.
And when your customers start realizing natural resources hold value beyond dollar, the way to connect to them is to also value those natural resources beyond dollar.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's a good thing as the world gets more populated and these places get more crowded, it becomes more important to think about those things, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing to me. I don't live very far from the DMV in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and it's downtown. Everyone passes by downtown, but it was amazing to me to see how many out-of-state plates were in the parking lot of the DMV getting licenses for Idaho during the pandemic. Yeah. California, Texas, Colorado, plates from everywhere coming here. And I live about an hour and a half from Yellowstone, so we already get an influx of travelers.
Yeah.
But the people, the travel, you see the people on the river, and they're usually tourists, and they stop and they visit, and then they move to Yellowstone. But the people in the parking lot at the Division of Motor Vehicles, all those out-of-state plates were coming to stay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, you're starting to see that push. There's the animals start to shift with climate change. Mm-hmm. There's that whole shifting the migration routes as the temperature shifts. Mm-hmm. But you're also seeing with humanity.
Yeah.
They're pushing into places that have space, that have resources.
Yeah.
you're starting to see that. And even if people don't realize that's what's going on, that's what it is. They're pushing into safer places to be.
Yeah, yeah, with more space. Yeah, I think you're right. And people are leaving the country too. Yeah, it's we see it up here in Bishop, but more from a recreation perspective because the land is all pretty much owned. You can't. There's no. They're not going to build more. The city in Bishop can't get a lot bigger because the land is around them is already owned by Department of Water and Power and other folks. So that can't happen. But you see them out here recreating. It's interesting, though. I never thought of that. I never, I haven't been to a small town like Idaho Falls. So that makes sense, though, because you read about it in the news and people are talking about it all over. People are looking to leave the country, leave the state. I mean, they're itching to get out of California because it's crowded and, whether you believe or support the politics or not, it's just weird. So, yeah.
Yeah, you see all the devastating wildfires in California.
Oh,
No
my
kidding,
God,
they want to run away from that, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you get a fire of that size in Idaho wilderness, no one lives there.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
It's fire at a grand scale, and it happens in more places in California. The problem in California is that people live there.
Well, hopefully it won't impact Idaho. People will not, as more people go there, we got to make sure that we don't let them live there. They shouldn't live there, in my opinion. Because
it is a tricky thing.
Yeah, sure. It's tough. But somebody's got to call it, right? Somebody's got to say, no, we can't do this. And we let them. We have these big fires in California, and then it burns all these places down. Then we rebuild them right where they were, and it happens again. It's like
same thing on Florida with flooding.
Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah,
if you're not supposed to build in this zone, don't rebuild in this zone.
Right. Yeah. You'd think that would make sense. All right,
but it's someone's home. It gets crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I get it. It's their home. Yeah, you're right. And some of these places in these remote towns and stuff, people live there for hundreds of years. So it's their ancestors' home.
Yeah, I saw a bumper sticker the other day in Idaho, and it was the shape of Idaho, the state, with the panhandle, and it said "F off, we're full."
A lot of folks are saying that. Yep, a lot of folks are saying that. Us Californians are, the world said that to the U.S. in the pandemic. They don't want us, coming in, so they wouldn't accept passports. And I'm sure states are saying that too for the same reasons, similar reasons anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make things interesting. And there's so much that has shifted lifestyle-wise because of the pandemic. Yeah. There's a lot that people aren't seeing yet. And that's one of the things I think people aren't really quite seeing.
Yeah, this is a major shift, yeah.
Yeah, not just visiting the river and the trails as they pass through. They're at the DMV getting a license.
Right.
They're staying.
Right. That's going to be different for them, yeah. How about favorite books? Do you have any favorite books, or do you have a book you give as gifts? Your book, of course. I give my book a lot.
I find that writing a book puts you in this whole new realm. And My Place Among Men is decades of the most dynamic news stories I've covered with my perspective added to it. And so I know that people like to read that. So when you read My Place Among Men, you're reading a legitimate news story with the perspective put into it that shows you what it's like to be in that moment.
Right.
And that can apply to every age, race, gender. And so people have really, I've got 12-year-old little hockey kids reading it, and I've got my neighbor that's 85 reading it. So
that's cool.
That matters. And if you can make a book like that, I'm drawn to those, but an editor is going to tell you that that's not the best way to write. If you niche down, it sells better. I'm already niched down because I'm in the outdoors.
Yeah.
So there's some of that. If I have to pick, if I'm going to pick a book that I want to give to someone, honestly, it's not a classic novel style book. It's a book that fits more to my 2-minute attention span.
Yeah.
And that's All the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss.
Oh, cool. I love it. That's a good one. Yeah.
I love the way he plays with words.
Yeah.
I love the way he breaks all the rules on what we think things look like and sound like.
Right.
And that he does it in about 2 minutes.
He was an amazing writer. To get a little kid to sit down and write a book like that. And then even adults, like you say, some of those books you read them as adults, like, God, I never read that before. I never interpreted it that way before. That's cool. How about your favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
My favorite piece of outdoor gear pushes the $100 mark pretty hard.
That's okay.
But I think it's still worth it. It's trail running shoes.
That's
so I've tried different brands, and so it kind of depends on what kind of. I think it all comes down to cushion.
Yeah.
I used to run barefoot, so I'm a minimalist.
Oh,
I
wow.
want as little as I can get on the bottom of my feet. I like to feel the ground, and I don't run barefoot anymore. I think after 15 miles, that's not a smart idea.
Yeah, that's pretty hard on the knees.
But here's what I find about trail running shoes. I wore hiking boots forever, and when I broke my leg in 3 places. One of the breaks was the hockey puck hit my shin and then just kind of shattered the bone in every direction from there.
Wow.
And so where a hiking boot rides up higher on the shin, that's a total no-go for that seam where rods and screws are inside my rebuilt leg.
Yep.
I can do it, but I don't like it.
Yep.
So I stopped wearing a high-rise hiking boot. And I had trail runners in my closet because I run trail.
Yeah.
I started wearing that instead. And now I wear my trail runners when I'm not running.
Yeah.
My old pairs are my mowing shoes. I go through several pairs a year.
Yeah.
And so the bottom wears out before the top. So I just mow in them.
There you
But
go.
I find that I'm also, we went scouting for elk a few weeks ago and I wore trail runners. And we weren't even on a trail.
Yeah.
And we were bushwhacking and I found I found like a moose graveyard. It was like the whole remains of a moose and it's
Oh, wow, cool.
rack and everything.
Wow.
Totally undisturbed. And so we were way off trail and I was only in trail runners. And so a trail runner with a gator guard to keep out the gravel,
Yeah.
I find is so versatile and works in so many situations. If I need to get in the river, they dry out quick.
Yep. Yep.
So I picked trail running shoes because they are versatile way beyond trail.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't wear hiking boots either. Stiff soles or any of that stuff. Nope. I wear lightweight and oftentimes trail running shoes just because I have really bad knees. But I agree with you. I mean, it's lighter. It's less work on your leg. And if you can get a good trail running shoe, you get the support you need. So I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And I would say that maybe with a heavy pack, a multi-day backpacking trip where you've got your house on your back, my camera pack on my back for extended time, maybe that's not the best idea without ankle support, but by and large, I'm doing fine without wearing a big, heavy, stiff, clunky hiking boot.
Yep, I'm with you. Yep, I'm the same. Yep. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience or ask of our audience?
I would ask you to do this. Stick your feet in the river, any river, the closest one you can get to. People say they don't have access to the outdoors, but you know what? You drink water and that water's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
Find flowing water and stick your feet in it.
I love it.
It just makes that connection to our outdoor world that much more important to you if you can connect with it. And that's a simple way to do it. You don't need a lot of expensive gear. You don't have to drive far.
Yeah.
But just find a way to connect. And for me, that's just sticking your feet in the water.
Perfect. I love it. That's a good one. That should be a T-shirt. Maybe I'll make a T-shirt. And if people want to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to find you?
The best way to reach
We'll
me,
link to all your social. Yeah, we'll link to all your social feeds. Yeah.
So the best way to find me would be to go through my company website, tightlinemedia.com.
Okay, cool. We'll link to that in the show notes too. Well, it's been great talking to you. I look forward to seeing you at one of the OWAA events soon. And,
yeah.
Whenever we get back together, we will. It's coming. I think it's.
And if there's an OR, we got to do that. We should for sure make sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
If there's an in-person event where we can actually see people, we got to meet.
Yeah, we will connect. Definitely. Well, thanks, Kris. I look forward to letting you know when this goes live and talking to you next week on the webinar, maybe, or next month, I guess it is, on that webinar.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Have a good day.
Have a good holiday.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Saez.